production without the use of chemical fertilizers, pesticides, or other artificial agents, while conventional is the use of synthetic chemical fertilizers, pesticides, or other genetically modified organisms. The question is, which is better for our environment?
Organic farming can really drastically cut carbon emissions and greenhouse gas emissions because we're not using a lot of fossil fuels. We're not using chemicals and amendments that are manufactured somewhere else. And so just even the act of creating these chemicals creates a lot of carbon emissions.
9% of greenhouse gas emissions come from agriculture.
The problem is we're pumping too much carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, much faster than the land and the seas can absorb it. And the accumulating gas is trapping heat and upsetting the world's climate.
The U.S. is the second largest carbon emitter with 5.27 billion metric tons in 2012. America could fix this by switching to organic farming. A 1% increase in organic farming acreage could reduce emissions by 0.05%.
Fertilizer runoff, as we know, can increase algal blooms, and then algal blooms can decrease the amount of oxygen, and it can kill off the natural cycle and progression of nitrogen and carbon through like pond and water ecosystems. Mostly though, carbon dioxide and methane and other emissions affect global warming, that much of that comes from more of the factory farming of livestock rather than farming of crops.
If farmers can not till the soil, use Roundup or use other weed control products to keep the soil undisturbed, they can sequester about a half a metric ton of carbon per year that's held within the soil instead of being released into the atmosphere and contributing to greenhouse gases, global warming, and so on.
That excessive amounts of fertilizer and sewage going into the systems changes the composition of algae. Algae that tend towards this red tide direction seem to favor these high nitrate situations. So I feel pretty comfortable saying that if we're trying to address this red tide issue, we've got to look upstream, and we have to think about the way that land food is affecting seafood.
But how can conventional farming be good?
The benefits of growing these transgenic crops is that they can actually protect themselves against some of the pests and other risks that come with growing crops. So transgenic, that's what people typically refer to as GMO. You eliminate or reduce the amount of insecticide that you're actually using on that crop.
To grow on a large scale and meet the needs of a growing population, I see where at times taking interventions is necessary, whether that's through chemical additives or through genetic engineering.
In order to maintain the yield levels and to get the returns and just to farm the amount of land that we farm today, doing it organically would put them at a cost disadvantage, and then we'd be looking at shortages of soybeans or potentially shortages of corn, which would drive up our fuel prices, which would drive up our food prices. Tillage is a practice that farmers use to control weeds. Our herbicides enable that no-till approach to farming, products like Roundup Ready crops and Roundup itself, whereas if I'm organic farming, I can't use those sorts of products, and so I have to resort to tillage. And tilling the soil in general, because there's organic matter in the soil, you expose it to oxygen, and then that releases greenhouse gases into the atmosphere.
However, the pros outweigh the cons. The science shows that organic is better for our environment and doesn't add to global warming like conventional farming does. Why aren't people making the switch to organic if it's so good for our environment? The fact is that organic food is significantly more expensive than non-organic food. According to the Food Navigator, 45% of Americans buy organic food regularly. Only 0.6% of the U.S.'s total farmland is USDA certified organic. Switching to organic will lower our CO2 emissions equivalent to getting rid of 1/3 of our cars. Shouldn't it be an American value to protect our environment?
We don't own this land. We're stewards of it. No one can own the environment. So it's our job to create a better future for the folks that come, towards us.
The experts will tell you that by 2040, 80% of the energy resource we'll rely on in the United States will continue to be fossil fuels. Now, what's happening in the United States today? We lead the world in carbon reductions. I think you're all well aware of that. And we're doing that today because of fossil fuel production in vast quantities that's made it competitive. It's allowed it to be used, and as we're continuing to improve the environment.
A lot of people don't have a natural appreciation anymore because people don't spend as much time outside because of technology. I think that there isn't an understanding for where our food comes from or where our waste goes. So because of that, I think that although protecting the environment should be a part of everybody's core value system, I don't think it is yet.